You're watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. Today, we have in the studio a very interesting guest, KM Leong, the General Manager for Southeast Asia of Xiaomi International. KM, thanks again for gracing us here at Bukit Jalil. And of course, you're a very busy man. And while you have very humble beginnings here in Kuala Lumpur, you are, of course, a world traveler based out of many capital cities in Southeast Asia. So it's really a treat getting you in the show today. I want to do a quick check because the last time we spoke, we touched on a few issues. One of them is, of course, the growth of Xiaomi in terms of market share, not just in Malaysia, but of course around the world and predominantly in Southeast Asia. How have things fared over the past few years, particularly when we look at the pandemic restrictions easing up? I'm sure there's going to be greater growth strategies moving on for Xiaomi International. So let's do a quick check on that.
Yeah, so thanks for having me here. Yeah, it's been a really busy traveling schedule for me.
And, you're like a superstar artist like that, you know, doing the world tour.
Okay. Yeah, so last year has been very great. I think a few weeks ago, Xiaomi published our annual financial report that actually compile a lot of good figures of our last year business performance. So I would like to share a few statistics here to all the audiences. So last year, the entire Xiaomi Corporation, we have achieved a total 328.3 billion RMB in revenue. So that is accounted for 33.5% annual growth in terms of revenue. So if you look at the profit, it's even more outstanding, where we actually achieved over 22 billion RMB in net profit itself. And that's
so market share, that puts you number one in China?
So we are currently the top 3 smartphone shipment in the world. And in Southeast Asia, we achieved number 1 in terms of smartphone shipment last year Q2. And in Malaysia, we are still number 1 for the entire year of 2021 last year.
Okay, what's driving this kind of phenomenal growth, the 33% revenue jump from year on year?
Well, so we are continuously to commit to our core strategy, which is the smartphone multiplied with AIoT, that actually drive a lot of synergy between these 2 business segments in various aspects. So such as the marketing strategy, the product development, as well as the interconnectivities between the smartphone and all the IoT devices. So there are lots of things to share here. So when we talk about interconnectivities between the smartphone and IoT, so you can literally using a one simple apps, the Mi Home apps, from your phones to manage all our IoT devices, as well as to control some of the features within the devices. So when it comes to the product developments, so if you check on our smart home products, such as the air purifiers, the robot vacuum cleaner, the color code, the design language are really consistent. The curve, the angle, the color tone is all very consistent across all the smart home appliances products. So that's really synergies between the all the products.
Okay, and what about wearables as well?
So yeah, and wearables. So if you look at the wearables and how the design language is really consistent across our different categories, and we do not tend to offer too many SKU, but for each of the very significant price band, we only select the best features according to that price band and offer to our consumer. So what our consumer really need to do is to check on our own affordabilities and to check the respective SKU accordingly.
There is a thought process here, particularly when it comes to technology devices and, more importantly, consumer technology, where providing a lot of options, greater SKUs to consumers might not necessarily be the best way forward. Provide the lesser amount of SKUs, lesser amount of options, so that the consumer is more confident of the options provided. Do you feel that this is something what Xiaomi is emboldening right now?
Right, Xiaomi has been always pursuing for greater, amazing products with honest prices, and we strictly follow these strategies. We always provide the best features at the best prices accordingly, and it really doesn't really need too many SKU because that's really confusing our consumer.
I agree. Even I am confused sometimes with the options available. But one other area that I want to touch on is, of course, recurring revenue and bundles. Do you feel that this is an option for you to provide more choices for your consumers in this regard? Not necessarily the hardware perspective, but recurring revenue and subscription services to a point where you can continue to create revenue post-sales of the devices?
Well, it has been proven with our last year financial results. So out of the 328.3 billion revenue in total, so there are 85 billion revenue actually coming from the AIoT. So that is actually total up to more than 20% of our total annual revenue pool. As for the smartphones, it's actually contributed only 70%, which is around like 163 billion RMB in total revenue. So there's still remaining 10% of our last year revenue contribution were actually coming from the software and internet services.
Okay, with this, right, this is the problematic part on your end. You've achieved high growth for 2021. 2022, I'm sure the organization, your shareholders and many other stakeholders are expecting Welcome back. I have with me KM Leong, the General Manager for Xiaomi International for Southeast Asia. KM, let's talk a little bit more about the manufacturing processes elements here, of course, supply chain issues. You are, of course, right in the thick of it when it comes to the semiconductor business, and of course, logistics, moving products from one place to another. And with all the disturbances that is currently happening around the world, not least with the Ukrainian-Russia war and many other issues surrounding the post-pandemic world that we're living in, how has that impacted your business when it comes to securing supplies, raw materials, manufacturing, and of course distribution across the various markets that you're operating in?
Right. So I think we had a really in-depth discussion about the global supply chain issue last year during our online interview. And during that time, I also mentioned that our strategy of the global resources and local insights that actually help us to drive a lot of, to overcome a lot of hurdles, obstacles, navigate us through the storm of global supply chain. So I'd like to share a little bit more about our development process. We actually plan our product development 16 months ahead. So a lot of our design materials and supply materials were actually planned well ahead.
So is that like a normal kind of industry standard to plan 16 months ahead, or are you guys a little bit more, a little bit less than competition when it comes to future planning?
Well, that really depends on different companies. So if you have a really big say in the supply chain, you have a lot of priorities in terms of selecting the best materials, the most advanced technologies, and also in prioritization in terms of supply management. So like the suppliers will definitely prioritize if you have a big say in the volume. So that is so important that Xiaomi try to gain as much as possible our product shipments as well as market share, so that we can have a really strong say in the supply chain management.
But like I said earlier, it's already impressive, in terms of the growth that you guys have been facing. But sooner or later, you're going to be running out of consumers eventually, right? I'm sure the journey is going to be leading you in that direction. So what happens next when it comes to Xiaomi? Once you capture enough market share, once you are, say for instance, in the top 3 right now, you are number 1, what's next? Because I'm sure it's going to be more of services or trying to present some sort of lifestyle changes to the consumer. What would be some of the thinking when it comes to life after capturing the necessary market share from the market?
Well, when we talk about the market share, we often talk about the smartphone market share itself, right? So if you look at our financial...
I'm guilty of that, by the way. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Nobody thinks about, I don't know, wearables market share or home market share.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at our financial reports last year, so 70% of our revenue contributed by the smartphone, but there's still a very promising and significant revenue mix within our revenues. That's like more than 20% were actually coming from the AIoT, and 10% were actually coming from the software and internet services. So we see a huge room to grow potentially from the IoTs. And if you open up the IoT segments, it's actually a combination of multiple categories such as a smartphone, smart home, wearables, as well as healthcare and mobilities as well. So in terms of smart home, it's actually coming from kitchen, living room, productivities. So like last year, we introduced our air purifiers, vacuum cleaner robots, as well as a smart TV that actually help us to gain a really, really huge market share growth on these particular segments. And we are seeing still a lot of huge opportunities for us to bring all these traditional devices or appliances to the smart world, where you can have more intelligence, artificial intelligence in particularly, to be embedded and integrated into these traditional appliances.
I got two further questions. Number one is, of course, health. You were mentioning just now that mix. What do you mean by that? How is the details?
Like the scale, the weight scales that we introduced last year as well has gained a lot of attraction because we embedded a lot of measurements features inside the scale. That actually the scale is actually connected back to your Mi Home app. So there's unified apps that you can actually check your fat ratio, your weights as well as some of the cardio statistics on your activities. So these are the smart features that never came before in the traditional scale, right? So we are seeing a huge opportunities where all the traditional appliances that we're currently using, we can give a really smart and intelligent features into it, and it can create a huge market opportunity or market space for the next 5 to 10 years.
Apple's Apple Watch is registered as a medical device authority by Malaysian authority, and it provides EKG data and all the other data when it comes to cardio. Now, their road to getting the necessary requirements in Malaysia was actually a long one, an arduous one. They were launching it, I don't know, 3 years before Malaysia actually got that kind of approval. Now, it's essential because I think that basically shows that the data that they provide can also be used as a guide for medical practitioners. Is Xiaomi's health pillar or vertical moving towards that in a way where it's not just about providing data? I mean, I have a Xiaomi scale at home and I have a Mi app here and I observe that, but I don't know how I can tell my doctor, give this information to my doctor that my doctor can actually use this as a guide. Where's the next step for health when it comes to Xiaomi? Is that the direction that we're looking at?
Well, that's still a very early age, as you mentioned. So, but what Xiaomi see is the artificial intelligence, right? Not only populating the data and show it to your maps, but how's the intelligence, how's the artificial intelligence with a big data merged together, so that not only to show the data afterwards, but also to prevent things to happen and to pops up some notice in advance, right? So these are the areas that we are looking into it. So how we leverage the big data, how we leverage the cloud computing as well as artificial intelligence, merge them together and create more like life hacking features to our future products.
The second question, of course, is on how much is going to be invested in R&D. You were mentioning 300 billion RMB. That translates to around 150 billion ringgit. Am I right? Or
right, more than that.
More than that, close to 200.
Right.
Yeah, percentage-wise, what are we looking at when it comes to investment into R&D?
Right. So we actually invested more than 13 billion RMB. 13 billion RMB. So
it's about 4 to 5% of your revenue for last year.
Right. And actually that actually accounted for 46% annual growth. So 46% annual growth
is dumped into R&D.
Right.
To prove that you guys are committed into pushing forward the AI agenda.
Not only the AI, but also smart connectivities, and we also committed to further further spend additional 100 billion RMB in the next 5 years in research and developments.
So you are talking about 70% mobile, 30% others, right? Is that a mix that you're comfortable with, or is that something that you want to change over the next few years?
Well, from the Southeast Asia perspective, we are looking into, our ultimate goal is looking into having a 50% mix between the smartphone and IoT business. As I mentioned, we have, in terms of IoT business, we actually it's actually a combination of many multiple segments: smart home, wearables, healthcare, and also mobilities.
You know, one thing that Xiaomi is really good at is not just about R&D and rolling out fantastic products to your consumers. This is a bit tough for you to answer, I suppose. Regulatory requirements around countries are going to be creating some sort of a hurdle for you guys to grow your business even further. For better or worse, regulators are there for a reason in many of those countries. In India, for instance, there is a regulatory requirement that results in one of your head in India currently being investigated. For whatever reason, that is the case moving forward when it comes to Chinese tech companies, right? Not just about this particular case itself. So my question to you is this: how do you reconcile the kind of growth strategies that you have and the growth execution that you're currently doing right now day to day with the kind of requirements that is being set by all the regulators in the countries that you operate in? I'm sure it's not going to be easy, right?
Yeah, that's really tough. So I don't think this is particularly about the company coming from China. It's actually you like it a lot. Different countries have different regulations. But Xiaomi is committed to operate our business that is fully compliant to the local authorities or regulatories. It's really, of course, I have to admit that there are huge challenges for us to try to bring in more products into particular markets. For example, I'll give an example about the e-scooter. It's really gained a lot of interest among the consumer in Western Europe, in China as well, in Australia. But it's just really difficult for us to bring it into the Southeast Asia
because of regulatory
regulatories and transportation restriction and things like that. So, but we're still working very hard, try to work with the local authorities. We also setting up a team. Like in Malaysia, we have some staff locally here that really working with the compliances department, CRIM, and various regulatory commissions, try to explain, breakthrough, or even more advanced. We tend to, and we are really interested to continuously contribute into the local policy makers.
That's interesting.
Right, so technology authorities, technical advisor, consultants on how the future connectivities, artificial intelligence, as well as sustainability, energy growth in this particular country or the entire region. So these are the areas that we always try to explore and try to join or involve more locally into the authorities or local regulatories.
So, of course, Xiaomi right now is quite strong in the consumer business, and that will be much of your focus, of course, every day. But do you see that this is something that you want to diversify as well? Not just about the product mix in the consumers, but leaving the consumer business aside, networking, IoT, AI, regulatory, all these other stuff that might not necessarily be so much B2C kind of business. Do you feel that this is an area that you guys are growing as well moving forward?
Well, okay, so in Xiaomi, we see things really simple. So in our mission, we always want to become the coolest brand in our fans' heart. So our Xiaomi fan is really the core of all our strategies. We always want to build amazing products with honest prices, innovative technology, accessible for everyone. So these are the core value that really uphold strongly within every Xiaomi employee's heart. Right. So we try to make this simple. We build anything that our fans and consumer needs, and then everything is just a challenge that we need to get through
to achieve that objective, primary objective.
Absolutely. We didn't really think too much what is B2B, what is B2C. So everything is about our Xiaomi fans and the consumer needs.
Fantastic. That's a great way to end. That was our conversation with KM Leong, the General Manager of Xiaomi International, Head of Southeast Asia. It's always a pleasure talking to you, KM. It really is. And last time we were both frustrated with our Zoom meeting kind of thing.
Yeah, the adjustment.
Yeah, the adjustment. But of course, now it's always happy to see you back in, see you face to face. And of course, there's plenty of interviews like this that can be found on our website. So do check out Xiaomi on astroawani.com. You can also check out my show, Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani. Of course, there's plenty more that can come after this. So do stay tuned. Until then, thanks very much for watching and goodbye.